Welcome back. Did you know that some of the strongest people you will ever know, they're barely holding themselves together? And the truth is, you would never know it because they smile, they perform, they show up, they help everyone else, they carry responsibilities, they keep moving, keep producing, and keep surviving. But internally, they're exhausted. Not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, and nervously. Does that sound familiar? Is that person you? Maybe you have been carrying everything else alone. Maybe so well that people assume you don't need support. Maybe you've mastered the art of looking okay while quietly drowning underneath the weight of your own life. And the dangerous part is, modern culture applauds this. Handle it yourself. Be strong. Don't depend on anyone. No excuses. Don't be a burden. Keep pushing. But nobody talks about what happens when strength becomes emotional isolation. Nobody talks about the costs of becoming the person who never asked for help. Strength without connection eventually becomes suffering. You were never designed to carry grief alone, fear alone, pain alone, pressure alone, healing alone. We're not machines as human beings. We're actually emotional creatures wired for connection. And yet, so many people are dying emotionally behind a mask called independence. Think about it. The people who are really strong swimmers, nobody is ever concerned about them drowning. Today, we're going to talk about the hidden pain of hyper-independence, the fear of vulnerability, the childhood ones that taught people to suppress their needs, and why asking for help may not be weakness at all. Asking for help may be one of the bravest things a human being can do. There's this cartoon I see, and it's sort of like a red fox and a little boy and a horse. And somebody asks one of the little characters, "What's the bravest thing you ever said?" And the character says, "Help." You know, asking for help is one of the bravest things we can do, because maybe the strongest thing you could do right now is to stop carrying everything alone. With me, I've been working on really refining my purpose. What is my why? Why am I here? And I understand that my why has always been, I'm here to help. I want to help. And I'm refining it a little bit to understand that, the truth is, I know I can't take away another person's pain. That's not possible. But I want to be the person who puts out things like these podcasts and my social media, and when people are in my presence, I want them to understand that I know I can't take your pain away, and nor do I want to, because the pain is what makes us grow. But I just want to make sure you don't feel alone when you're in pain. There are people listening to this right now who are exhausted in a way that sleep will not fix. You are tired from holding it together, tired from pretending, tired from overthinking, tired from being the dependable one, tired from carrying everyone emotionally while silently abandoning yourself. And maybe no one notices. Because competence hides suffering very well. Think about that. Like the more competent you are, the better you can hide your suffering. Because you can still go to work, you can still answer texts, you can still pay bills and still smile in public, still function. But internally, you're overwhelmed. And the hardest part, you don't even know how to ask help anymore. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that your needs were inconvenient. You know, I remember when I was really young. I was a depressed, incredibly young person. And I tried to lean into self-harm, thoughts of taking my own life. And I remember telling my mom I was depressed, and she said, "You have nothing to be depressed about." And I realized at one point that if you're sad, everybody tries to either cheer you up or tries to tell you how you have nothing to be sad about. So somewhere along the line, I learned, Sam, I'm sick. And it seemed like it was okay if you're sick, but it's sure not okay if you're sad. Yeah. And I also learned as a child, don't cry. It was like, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Don't be dramatic. Don't figure it out yourself. Or the famous one, other people have it worse. You have no reason to be sad. And maybe love felt conditional. Vulnerability was ignored, dismissed, or even punished. And slowly we stopped reaching out. And you started carrying everything inside. You became so self-reliant that you didn't need anyone. And not because it was empowering, but because it was safer. Some people who became independent because dependence once hurt them. And then everything changes because hyper-independence is often not confidence. It's self-protection. It's armor. And armor works. Yeah, it works. But it separates you from everything and no connection. No one can ever get close. And eventually you forget how to take it off. There is an invisible weight of independence. And let's talk about the truth about this. People praise the strong friend, but how often do they check on them? People admire that resilient human being, and they also assume they don't need support. But over time, the strong one becomes emotionally invisible. You become the person everybody leans on, while secretly wondering who you can lean on. But you probably lost the ability to lean on. You probably don't believe anybody cares anyway. And eventually, you just stop asking. Not because you don't need help, but because you convince yourself, I should be able to handle this alone. The strongest people often suffer the longest because they refuse to be seen struggling. Many people listening right now do not lack love. They lack safety. Safe to be messy, safety to fall apart, safety to admit they're overwhelmed, safety to not have all the answers. And when people do not feel emotionally safe, they perform strength instead of expressing pain. It's like this quote I saw once, and it's like, my goal is to create a space where you can let down your guard and take off your armor. You know, it's interesting. Like I remember there was a time, and I always say I'm an extroverted introvert. Like I don't feel comfortable in crowds. I remember I went to one of my friends dragged me to this party, and it was a group of our friends that were there. And the party's going on upstairs, and I'm standing there, and all these things everything's going on, and I'm just kind of like, I'm just taking steps back to see if anybody would even miss me. And I'm watching everything go on like I'm not even there. Then finally, I took my case of beer down into the family room downstairs. Partially to drink alone, partially to see if anybody missed me. Because, the tragedy is, and this is the biggest tragedy, is human beings heal best in connection with other human beings, not isolation. Solitude can help us reflect, but isolation magnifies suffering. Your thoughts grow louder, your fears get darker, and your shame grows stronger. And suddenly you start believing, no one would understand. I am too much. I don't want to burn anybody. Listen and hear me carefully. You are not a burden because you have emotions. You're human. But there is a fear of being a burden. This fear destroys people quietly. The fear of needing too much, of feeling too much, of asking for too much. So instead, people suffer silently. They answer, I'm good, while breaking apart internally. They isolate when they need connection the most. And they disappear emotionally while still appearing physically present. Because vulnerability feels dangerous. And honestly, for many people, at one point it was. Maybe someone mocked your emotions, ignored your pain, abandoned you when you needed support the most. So now your nervous system says never again. And without realizing it, you begin associating vulnerability with danger. When people fear vulnerability, they start surviving emotionally instead of living authentically. And survival mode, it changes us, makes us guarded, emotionally numb, overly self-sufficient, and unable to receive help, even when it's offered. Some people do not just struggle to ask for help. They physically do not know how to ask anymore. Because they've spent years, lifetimes, I can handle it. I don't need anyone. I'm fine. Even when they're not. I remember a close friend of mine, Sunny. I met her randomly and then synchronistically. And I remember I was talking to her one day and I was welling up with emotion. and I was going to cry. And like, I am trying to get away from her so I can go to the bathroom and cry. And she's like, don't hide from me, Kimen. Don't hide from me. And I broke down. And that was the first time I'd cried since I was probably 6. Well, cried in front of another human being. And it just came out of me. This was the same human being that was I would tell her all the ways I hated myself and how I sucked, and she wouldn't believe it. She just batted it aside, said, no, I see you. No, I see you. No, I see you. There's an irony here, mostly the people who fear being a burden, most of the time they're the ones willing to carry everyone else. Think about it. You give compassion freely to others while you deny it to yourself. Okay, so what if asking for help is not weakness? What if refusing help out of fear is actually the deeper wound? Because strength is not the absence of struggle. Strength is honesty inside of struggle. Hear that? Strength is not the absence of struggle. Strength is honesty inside the struggle. Real strength is allowing yourself to be human, not perfect, not invincible, not emotionally bulletproof, human. Culture says hustle harder, push through, don't stop, but your nervous system is begging for something else. Strength, connection, present, honesty, support, love. And maybe the reason you feel so exhausted is because you were never supposed to carry this much alone. There's a reason people heal faster in safe relationships. There's a reason support groups work. There's a reason honest conversations can be life-changing. Connection regulates the nervous system. Being seen changes people. Being understood changes people. Sometimes healing is not found in another strategy, but in realizing, I don't have to do this alone anymore. And the honest truth is, if there's anything I want to be on this world, if there's anything I can do in this world, if I do nothing else but teach people that they don't have to do it alone anymore, then it's been a good life. So what about a tool? Because kind of big on tools nowadays. So how do you begin letting people in again? How do you move from emotional survival to emotional connection? And here are some powerful steps. First, stop glorifying emotional isolation. Independence is value, but isolation is not strength. Pay attention to how often you automatically say, I'm fine, I got it, don't worry about me. Ask yourself honestly, is that confidence or self-protection? Number 2, start small with vulnerability. You ever heard like of progressive loading or progressive exposure? You don't dive in head first, but you need to start. You do not need to reveal everything overnight. Healing begins with safe honesty. A simple, I've been struggling lately. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what I need right now, but I do know I need support. Small openings will create connection. 3, learn to receive. See, some people know how to give love, but panic when receiving. Practice allowing support without guilt. You do not earn rest by suffering long enough. You're worthy of support now. And if you have a lot of problems, then think about this statement. And this is what I tell people when I try to give and they try to say, no, no, no. I say, think about how you feel when you do something kind or you help someone else. How does that make you feel? It doesn't pretty good, right? And I'll say, don't rip me off of that feeling. Okay. 4, build safe relationships. Not every person deserves your vulnerability. Pick and choose, but some people do. Pay attention to who listens without fixing, who makes you feel emotionally safe, who allows you to be honest without shame. Healing accelerates in safe environments. 5, stop interpreting needs as weakness. Every human being has emotional needs. It's normal. Connection is not a weakness. Support is not a weakness. And honesty, above all, is not weakness. Suppressing yourself until you emotionally collapse is not strength. It's not something to hold above. I want to speak to you directly right now. Directly to the person who feels emotionally alone in a room full of people, because I am that person many times and through my life. The person who carries everyone else, the person who checks on others but never opens up themselves, the person who secretly feels exhausted from always being the strong one. I know that role, and I know how heavy it becomes because strength turns into loneliness when no one knows the real you. And this line sticks. The version of you that never needs anyone is usually the version that's hurting the most. You don't have to collapse completely before asking for support. You don't need to earn help by suffering silently for years. You do not need to become emotionally perfect before being worthy of love. And maybe, just maybe, the healing you're searching for is hiding inside the vulnerability you keep avoiding. Listen carefully. You're not failing because you need support. You are human. And there's massive difference. Because mountains were never meant to move alone. Trees survive through connecting root systems. Even nature survives through independence. Yet human beings shame themselves for needing each other. That's not wisdom, that's conditioning. Let's try grounding and reflection. Take a deep breath just for a moment. Seriously, just pause. How long have you been carrying things silently? How much pain have you normalized? How much exhaustion have you minimalized? How many times have you told yourself just keep going when what you really wanted and needed was support? What if your healing begins the moment you stop pretending to be okay? What if vulnerability is not the crack where people leave, but the doorway where connection enters? I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up one day without feeling like you must carry the entire emotional weight of the world alone. Imagine where you feel safe enough to tell the truth, safe enough to rest, and safe enough to be fully human. And that life does exist, but it begins with honesty. So before we end today, I need you to remember this. You're not weak for needing people. You're actually wired and built for connection. And somewhere along the way, many people learn to confuse emotional suppression with strength. But surviving alone is not the highest form of strength. Connection is. Healing often begins the moment someone finally says, you do not need to carry this alone anymore. So what if you're listening to this today and you have been silently drowning, silently struggling, silently carrying everything, please hear me. You deserve support. You deserve rest. You deserve connection. And you deserve spaces where you do not have to perform strength constantly. And maybe the strongest thing you can do this week is tell the truth. Not the polished truth. Not the motivational version, for real truth. Because that honesty may become the bridge back to yourself. I love you. I believe in you. And no matter how heavy life feels right now, you are never meant to carry it alone. I'll see you in the next episode. Keep going and keep building your own inner advocate.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Inner Advocate, a podcast by Kimen Petersen, formerly Conversations with Kimen. If you found value in today's episode, please follow, like, and share the podcast with someone who you think may benefit from it. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and connect on Instagram at your_inner_advocate. Until next time, keep listening to and developing your inner advocate.